Namo Amidabuts, Namo Amidabuts, Namo Amidabuts, Namandavs, 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 Namandavs. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I recently had a conversation with some friends from a different faith. They know I practice Buddhism, but are also aware that I grew up Catholic. So some of their questions were specifically about my previous religious background. Questions came up regarding certain rituals or ceremonies that are common in Catholicism, such as baptism, communion, and confirmation. Other faiths may see these practices as unnecessary or nonsensical. But we shouldn't forget that there is something to be found in all those rituals, ceremonies, and traditions found in many religions. Experience. Buddhism also has its fair share of traditions, rituals, and practices. When I began attending services at the Buddhist Temple of San Diego about 7 years ago, there were certain practices that required certain readjustments from my part. At first, when I saw everyone doing gasho, it just reminded me too much of praying at church. For the longest time, I couldn't bring myself to chant any gathas, especially the ones in English. It just reminded me too much of singing during Mass. Eventually, I realized that I was overanalyzing things, that deep in my subconscious, I was constantly comparing the services to my past experiences in the Catholic school and church. I came to realize that rituals are not about rationalizing things. It's all about the experience. Once I discovered that putting my hands together doesn't have to be about praying or asking for something, that it can be a way to express gratitude, to show respect, to honor someone, I began to value that practice. That same thing happened with chanting. I focused on how I felt whenever I chanted Sambujo or sang Ondoksan at the end of every service. Focusing on the experience instead of the words or how the practice compared to other religious customs finally led to acceptance. Acceptance from my part, in the sense that I could just enjoy the moment and not think of the past. That also helped me become more comfortable singing other gathas. Now, how does one explain these things to someone who's never been to our temple? How does one explain that chanting in the Hondo is both meditation and interdependence put into practice? I don't think one can truly explain this. It must be experienced. Chanting without truly understanding the words forces our brain to stop processing data and forces it to take a break. Keeping the same pace and tone as the rest of the Sangha as we chant makes us feel that we're all interconnected. How can I explain this to another person? The parable of the mustard seed is a story that I like, and that has to do with today's topic. For those who may not be familiar with the story, it revolves around a woman named Kisa Gotani, who lived during the time of Buddha's life when he had already achieved nirvana and was traveling to impart his teachings upon others. Kisa's only child, a very young son, had died. Unwilling to accept his death, she carried him from neighbor to neighbor and begged for someone to give her medicine to bring him back to life. One of her neighbors told her to go to the Buddha, located nearby, and ask him if he had a way to bring her son back to life. Bringing the body of her son with her, Kisa found Buddha and pleaded with him to help bring her son back to life. He instructed her to go back to her village and gather mustard seeds from the households of those who have never been touched by death in some way. From those mustard seeds, he promised he would create a medicine to bring her son back to life. Relieved, she went back to her village and began asking her neighbors for mustard seeds. All of her neighbors were willing to give her mustard seeds, but they all told her that their households had been touched by death. They told her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." Some had lost sons, others had lost daughters, fathers, mothers, and so on. As the day became evening, she was still without any of the mustard seeds that she had been instructed to collect. She realized then the universality of death. She buried her son in the forest and then returned to the Buddha. She confessed to Buddha that she could not obtain any of the mustard seeds he had instructed her to collect because she could not find even one house untouched by death. Kisa entered the first stage of enlightenment from her experience. She decided to become a disciple of Buddha and went on to become the first female arahant. Now, in this example, Shakyamuni Buddha could have tried to explain to Kisa in his own words how she wasn't the only one who had lost a loved one, and how we all must die eventually or suffer the loss of someone close to us. Some when very young, like her son, some when old. Would she have understood Shakyamuni Buddha explaining that in words? In her grief? Probably not. Kisa needed to find out on her own that we all suffer the loss of loved ones, sooner or later. She needed to experience this, accept the loss regardless of all the pain, and move on. Words would not have had the same effect. Some things just need to be experienced in order to be truly understood. The lotus flower also serves as a metaphor for experience that leads to wisdom and spiritual growth. We have this beautiful flower that rises from the mud. We can see the mud as all those bad experiences, mistakes, wrong decisions, failures, etc., that can lead to great wisdom. It is said that when everything is going great, we become complacent, spiritually stagnant, and we need those experiences, negative experiences in many cases, to jolt us back to reality and force us to wise up. In other cultures, we have more examples of how experience leads to transcendent realization. The vision quest, a coming-of-age ritual practiced in the past by certain native tribes in North America, is one of these examples. This process marked a transition from childhood to adulthood and commonly required the young person to retire into the wilderness, sometimes for several days without food or water, and all the while exposed to the elements. Through dreams or visions, it was said that the young person would discover what his role in the tribe would be. The psychological impact of the whole experience was a big part of this process. It would not have had the same effect if the young ones had been lined up and announcements made. You will be a warrior, you will be a holy man, and so forth. There had to be an experience behind it. I remember vividly when I got my Buddha's name back in 2016. During the ceremony, then Bishop Kodomesu tapped my head gently with a scroll and congratulated me with a big smile. Would I remember it as vividly if instead of that, I had just gotten an email saying, "Congratulations, you're now Buddhist"? I doubt it. This is why ritual and experience are so powerful. I'm not saying that every service we attend needs to result in some powerful psychological event. But we should be in tune with how all the pieces fit together and how each action, each ritual, each experience makes us more receptive to the Dharma and deepens our understanding of the interdependence that exists between us all. bowing, doing gasho, and saying the nembutsu are things we do many times without much of a thought. But not even a thought is required. We should just be mindful. We should ask ourselves as we do those things, what am I experiencing right now? What am I feeling right now? It's all about the experience. Please join me in gasho. Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namandavs, 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 Namandavs.